Hey, hope you're all doing well. I have with me here the Sheeran Looper X. Thank you to Belfield Music for sending this up for me to check out as well. Now, for a limited time, they are offering a discount if you use this code in their checkout when you purchase through the store. So if you want a bit of a discount from one of these bad boys, go through Belfield Music. So firstly, speaking of price, here in Australia, it is just over $2,000, which is pretty expensive for a loop station. When you compare it to the Looper Plus, it comes in at just over $500. Now it's only 2 pedals, whereas this is 8. Besides the obvious size difference, there is a lot going on under the hood that is not in the smaller Looper Plus. So firstly, this video is more or less an introduction, an overview of what's in the loop station, and I'm going to go more in depth into some of the features in other videos. So stick around, subscribe, and check all of those out. So we've got 4 inputs which can be independently routed. You can have each one come to its own individual track, or if you want to, you can have 4 different things and you can send them wherever you want to. There are also 4 outputs. You can either have 2 stereo outputs or 4 mono, and they can, again, each track can be independently routed out each one, which is pretty cool. Has mini in, out, and through. Has USB connectivity, and it also has an SD card slot in the back. So this comes with 5 gig of storage space in the unit, which is a lot. But if you get an SD card and chuck it in there, basically you can save as many loops as you want. There's also an expression pedal input on the back, so you can assign some parameters to that. And there is technically a 5th input, which is the auxiliary input as well. So of course it does look a lot like a Headrush, and that's because the same people who do Headrush helped out with this one. So Ed Sheeran, to get his board, he worked with In Music, which is owned by Headrush, and that's how he has all of that technology on his board. And that is essentially what's gone into this. You'd recognize the screen from the Headrush pedal boards. Now, this design is not Ed Sheeran's looping rig. His is a little bit different. It's double the length. It's only got 4 buttons on each side. It's got 2 here, and it's got a bigger screen on one side. But essentially, this board is based off his way of doing things, and it looks like this. Now, it is built like a tank. It's sturdy, it's solid, it's weighty, it's not going to go anywhere. It's built really, really well. I said it about the Looper Plus. These pedals are next level, so good. Everyone should do these kinds of things. For example, Boss, I don't understand why you changed to those little things when you guys did that stuff. You're so famously known for those pedals. Bring those back in your loopers. So let's circle back to the price. Why is this so expensive? Let's have a look under the hood. So this is what it looks like when you open it up. By default, you've got tracks. They look like such, but you can change the view, so it's either the wave view or the mixer view. End of the day, it comes down to what suits your preference. This panel here is effects. Every track can be assigned its own effects rack. The only problem here is that the effects are not applied to the input. Well, not exactly. I mean, yes and no. You can kind of make it work like you would a normal guitar rig, but it's not that simple, and I will dive into that in a bit more detail in other videos. But end of the day, you can put effects on every track. So say you want this one to be your drum beats. You can have your effects rack, this be a drum beat sound that you like all the time. It'll be EQ'd, compressed the way you want it. Bass line, same thing. Guitars, and then some extra vocals. You don't have to think about the effects. You don't have to press anything else. You just load the track and away you go. So these effects have been taken more or less from the Headrush. You've got the same sort of vocal tuner, guitar effects, but they are a lot more limited. Like for example, the amp. You don't get to choose different amps. You've just got this. It's an amp. You can change the cab so you can have a different style cabinet, but you cannot choose your amp. Essentially, it's an amp modern. The end. So you do have a tuner in here as well, and it's great. The Headrush tuner is great, and you can actually assign which input it is coming from. Next one is saving loops. So you can see I've saved 3 different loops here. Now this is all saved on the internal storage, and I've only saved 3 presets at the moment. So what you can do is you can create a new folder. Let's call this 4th rig. So if I create this folder, now there's a folder there. So there's going to be a set list in here of songs that I want. Otherwise, you can just save all of the songs, but if you have a set list, you can save all your songs into a particular folder. So the storage is more or less just like a computer. You've got folders files, and those kinds of things. The only thing I don't like about this way of saving things at the moment is that, say you've got 400 cover songs that you do every weekend, like myself, and you choose those songs based on what people are asking for. To find that song, you got to get down to the floor and look for it. With my RC300 setup, my iPad sends a note and chooses the patch that I want, but there doesn't seem to be any way that you can do that in here at the moment. So whoever works on these things, please do that. If you press new loop, then basically just a new loop will load up. Loop manager, that's the same thing. Here is just you can choose, load, rename, delete, you can do whatever you want. Storage, that just tells us how much storage we've used. And here you have a backing track option as well. So here you can load in any backing track you want. So you can see I've got a couple there. This one's Don't Stop Believing. Let's load that. So that's how long it takes to load. It's pretty quick. Now, these do not sync to the loops. This is independent and runs on its own. So if you think you can load some stuff and then sync it to the loops or even the drum machine, it doesn't work at the moment. I would love to see that feature included in a later update. And across the bottom, you can control your loop settings. You've got tempo, time signature, the click on and off. Now, click on, I definitely think you should do, and at least monitor the click, because then your timing is always going to be the same. Just food for thought. Looper mode, you can have multi, sync, song, band, or free. Essentially, there are 5 separate ways of looping your songs. Multi is essentially 4 tracks all in sync to one another. Sync is all tracks in sync with one another. However, you can have them at different lengths. So say you set track 1 at 2 bars, you can set track 2 to 4, 3 to 8. They need to be a multiple or a division of the primary. Song is 4 separate sections at whatever lengths you want them. They play independently. Band mode means 1 primary track. So say you've got your drum beat on track 1, the other 3 tracks would be intro, verse, chorus, or chorus, verse, bridge. And then free mode, which is just doing whatever the hell you want. So track length and quantize. So all track measures, here you can choose them all to be however many bars you want. And that's because I'm in multi-mode. So if I go to sync mode and come back here, you can see every track is now going to be a different length. However, now I can change it. Now, if I set track 1 and I loop on that, track 2 is automatically going to be 4 bars long, and I don't have to think about it, which is pretty handy. Then you can just arm it, press record. You don't have to stop. It just loops around. One shot and decay. That's pretty straightforward. You can just do a one shot. So say track 1 is a woo, and you just hit that when you want it. Sync audio to tempo. Now that kind of makes sense. I personally think that should be on. And you can customize the pedal menu. The mode pedal is default as the mute option, but you can change it to be either the tuner, your effects, or custom. Or you can just have a custom layout, which is pretty handy. Global settings in here. Now the pedal logic, it comes default at record, dub, play. You can change it so that it goes straight into play instead of overdubbing. Holding the record and play pedal either undoes the recording or you can peel. Hold track pedal. You got overdub and arm or clear track. After bounce, there is an option in here you can bounce your loops. So say you're on track 2, you've got 4 layers, you want to bounce that down to 1. What happens when you bounce it? It either deletes or you keep LCD brightness. So 5 is the maximum. And bars and layers count. That's probably not a bad idea to have on, I reckon. Show mixer, click, and backing track. Here's your audio settings. You can have fountain power on and off, XLR ground lift, type of outputs there. So you can run it straight into an amp, as you can see. You can route your tuner to somewhere else, or you can have it nowhere. USB audio, that of course is for when you are recording via USB. Choose your sample rate and whether it be live or DAW mode. MIDI control, which is great. You can have the MIDI clock receive, MIDI clock send, and MIDI through. So if you're using a Beat Buddy, it works great with this. I'm going to show you how to do that in another video as well. And info there is just the firmware and hardware. Audio routing is pretty cool. I'm going to go in depth in another video for this one. You can choose to have your dry signal going somewhere or not. All of your track routing is as such. These things turn on and off. And this is just your output levels per track. And down here, transfer and firmware. That is, of course, for the USB. So transferring your audio loops, so you can save your loops to your computer or you can transfer them and move them, and that's for firmware. Now, it's not overly practical to come down here all the time and go into the screen to do what you want to do. So if you press this function button, for example, now up here, that button is my tuner. This button is my effects. this button takes me to loading a new song. You can see what's going on there. You've got default 1, default 2, vocal effects, bank up, bank down, exit. So like I was saying before, if I have 400 songs that I need to go through to try to find the one that I want, it's not going to happen. It's just going to be too impractical. So if you have a set list, and that way you can cycle through the songs in order that you want them, and that's pretty quick and pretty easy. But I'd love to see an option come in where you can easily send a note across to the board to select a song. So say it's song 409, I want that, and then it gets there. And then save. Now down here you got peel, clear all, clear track, exit. So if I just make a really basic loop. So now I've got this, I've got that. That's great. As you can see, this is in sync mode. They're all at different lengths. So say I want to delete this track here. If I press that button, press clear track, and then clear that one, it has now been cleared. You do have to remember to press this to come out of that mode, or you will delete everything. This one I said before was mute. Now that mutes the track that is playing. So the tracks keep playing until they've been unmuted. Unfortunately though, even if they're muted and I press all stop and then press start, these guys do not come back in. So you have to unmute. So there's a bit of tap dancing there, but again, the mute option on the tracks is pretty handy. Clearing, you got two options. You can either hold down the stop button, gives you a 3 countdown, and you can choose to not do that if you don't want to, or you simply come in here, press clear all, and they have been cleared. Now I think that's way more practical. It's 2 taps, but holding for 3 seconds, it just seems like a lifetime. The other option here is if you hold the mode button, you now have the option to choose the song mode that you want. So you got multi, sync, song, and band. And here is our view. So track, wave, and mixer. So there is the mixer. Same thing, hold the mode button. Let's go back to track mode. Hooray, away you go. It does come pre-installed with a few backing tracks here, which is basically drum beats. When you load them, however, you do need to have it match the BPM. It doesn't just load and away you go. So what you have to do is preview it and count the bars. Right, so it was actually 8 bars long. Change that, press OK. And now, apparently the BPM was 35. That doesn't seem right. But if I press play, now track 1 there is doing what it needs to do. So if you are going to load your own backing tracks, they will show up here on the internal storage, or if you have the SD card, on the SD card. So things get saved in these folders like I was saying. You've got audio. Now I don't have nothing in there. I have 2 backing tracks so I can load them. So say I want to loop the backing track in, import that. What you do need to do if you're going to import it is you do need to know the BPM of the track before you import it. So do it on your computer, make a note, and then import it before doing that. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So for example, it's now there. If I press play on both, as you can hear, they were not in time. So unfortunately that way they don't stretch and they don't match. So you have to think about it before you import your tracks. So that is a very short introduction to the Looper X. Is it the right looper for you? If you are still undecided and you're thinking about getting one, follow through all of these videos that I'm going to be posting over the coming weeks, and hopefully it helps make the decision for you. One thing I can guarantee you is if you come from a looping background, this is not going to be the same as your other setups. You are going to have to relearn how you do things on a new looper. That's not a bad thing, it's just different. So hopefully I can help you decide whether or not this is the one for you. Like I said, lots of videos coming up. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. I'll see you next time.